welcome to Audiovisual Cultures with me, Paula Blair. I'm really super excited to be joined this time by artist Johanna Leech, who is going to talk about the Amabie Project that she's been working on and curating throughout the lockdown period in 2020. And it's hopefully going to culminate in an exhibition, but it's all online and you can see it on Instagram. So I'm going to let her explain more about it because she'll explain that a lot more articulately than I can. Huge thanks to our members over at patreon.com/AV Cultures for all your really valued support. If you are interested in joining, there are 3 tiers of membership at the moment. There's the pay what you can, which is £1, $1, €1, whatever, and that's going to get you access a bit early to the new episodes that come out. You'll get to hear it a day before everybody else. And then there are a couple of other memberships. There's a behind the scenes membership and a star supporter, which will get you a producer credit on any future stuff. So do take a look through those if you're able to help out. And for other ways to support and just help out the podcast, do listen right to the end, and I'll give you some other ways that don't involve a membership. But do make sure you subscribe, you hit that button just so that you never miss a new episode, and that'll help us out as well. So this one was a lot of fun to record. Johanna is a very, very good friend of mine, and I'm really proud of all of her work. It's a really visual episode as well. So if you're listening to the audio only, I have put the link to the video in the show notes, and do make sure you go and see that because Johanna actually shows us through quite a lot of the work that all of the artists involved have been creating and shows us through the Instagram. So if you're able to see that, I'd really highly recommend it. So enjoy very much, and I will see you on the other side. So I am super excited to be joined by my longest serving friend and artist, Johanna Leech. Hello, Johanna.
Hello.
How are we finding you today?
Not too bad, thanks. Just in limbo like the rest of us, I think. So trying to continue on, at least try and do something productive.
Excellent. Yes, and we're going to talk a bit about your productivity and what you're keeping busy with. If it's okay, can I just ask you to explain to everybody a bit about your background? I mean, we first bonded over our mutual love of dinosaurs, and I think that's something that's held us very close together all of these many very long years.
Yes, definitely. And it's in my artwork, you know, fascination with Sinclair dinosaurs from the World's Fair.
Absolutely. So would you kindly just talk us through a little bit of your own arts practice, and then we're going to talk about the really big project that you've been working on more recently?
Sure. So I'm a visual artist based in Belfast. I also work as a program manager for a local cinema and art centre. So sometimes a lot of those influences with working quite across lots of different art practices and arts fields in work can bleed into my practice a little bit. So instead of kind of having a sketchbook or kind of doing lots of drawings like every day, like most artists would, or quite frequently, my thing was to collect objects, collect stories, and making notes and taking photographs. So, you know, like if you look at my iPhone now, there's like 20,000 photographs that I'm kind of constantly referring back to. So that's my sketchbook. So it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of way I sort things in my head. I'm also dyslexic, so it just means that a lot of the time maybe written format isn't as easy for me, and the visual stands out really clearly because of that. So it just means then I kind of have this amalgamation, kind of like my work is almost like a little museum of its own. You know, you could have a look at my exhibition and there could be stuff that could be historical that I find something interesting. There could be local lore and legend, or there could be just an experience or a place that I've been to. So the work can kind of become things where it's maybe like more social practice, where I'm maybe using the objects in a way to perform to an audience, where like the object is shown in a way where it tells a story, or it itself is quite humorous and you kind of look at it and it gives you a chuckle. You know, like I always like the work to be familiar to the audience and very much kind of open for everyone to interpret. So my recent exhibition would have had things like a neon sign that said guns and gold, and kind of like a really particular lovely neon golden color that was a replica of one that I'd seen in America. And just that idea, so those two words together is quite interesting. And then I had wall drawings including wonderful dinosaur, and then I had stories about the dinosaurs that I've done work with, and collections from all around the world. So I had kind of display tables which had objects as well as stories all displayed together. So it's kind of, it takes you on a journey, and that's kind of always say to people, like, I'm an explorer, showing you my discoveries essentially. And then there was other things like photographs from kind of attractions or places from around America, so that work kind of stands alone quite well just as a photography, as a photograph. And then I'll do sometimes just really kind of scaled back drawings. So it just really depends.
Brilliant. Yeah. And this has a really close connection with the current project that you're working on. So you're curating this group of work of all kinds. It's cross media, and it's artists working in all different modes and from different backgrounds and all sorts of things. So can you tell us a bit about the Amabie Project, please?
Yeah, so Amabie is a Japanese yokai. A yokai is kind of like a mythical, kind of magical creature within Japanese mythology. And this particular character would come out whenever there was sign of a pandemic, or else maybe something to do with crops and different times where, you know, people would have worries about things. They could look towards the Amabie for some comfort. So, you know, she's a mermaid character, and she kind of comes out of the sea and is very kind of mystical. And I was just kind of really interested in that with the internet kind of and the era that we're in now, this character made a resurgence kind of through the start of the lockdown. And it just meant that there was a lot of people kind of posting pictures of her, or a lot of Japanese people like taking a bit of solace, you know, to actually do a little drawing of her or stick a little picture up of her in a window. And with everything that was else that was happening throughout the internet, and in the UK we kind of had all the kind of things, you know, like Help the NHS, and the rainbow kind of became this icon of camaraderie and hope for a lot of people. And that came from kids in America who just did it one time, and, you know, then people started to kind of replicate it, and it kind of spread like a virus, but a very positive one. And Amabie was kind of doing a bit of that. It was kind of trading on kind of if you kind of had like hashtag Amabie challenge. And when I saw that, I kind of thought, oh, you know, but what I'm really interested in is I had been to Japan last year, and I have connections through Flax Art Studios, where I'm based, with a really cool art space called Arts Ongoing, which is in Tokyo. And I kind of met those guys, and I kind of always kind of thought, oh, you know, like, what would I do if I went over and did a Japanese residency? So at this time where, you know, there's a pandemic and I can't go to Japan as much as I would love to, and looking at those connections, and just, I think the event manager in my head of kind of going, what can I do? You know, I can't go into the studio, and, you know, it's a really hard time to feel inspired. How could I reach out and make that connection between that kind of sense of this viral connection, but also bringing it back to artists' practices, but then looking at the connection between Japan and Belfast, especially because of Flax Art Studio. So they've been running for a number of years in exchange. And one of the main artists, who's a really good friend of mine, Shiro Masuyama, he is the only Northern Ireland artist based in Japan. And I was like, me and him were like sharing each other like pictures of Amabie and being like, oh, you know, we should get everyone in Flax to make an Amabie. And then we're like, but why should I be kind of making that quite narrow? So we opened it out because we wanted to share it with through Arts Ongoing and various other things. Like Shiro would have a lot of connections. Just, you know, to see if artists in general who are based in Japan and the Isle of Ireland, or someone, you know, who's still kind of connected to Ireland or still connected to Japan, what would they do? And to kind of make it initially like an Instagram that could become an exhibition. So it was just to see like what would happen. So I think it was something that kind of came up between me and Shiro, and we're like, hey, wouldn't this be fun to do that? And it kind of grew from there.
Fab. And so with the Irish connection, was there another mythical form from Irish mythology that you were looking at as well, or was it just the Amabie?
Well, originally I was talking to close friend Martin Boyle, and Martin was kind of my sounding board, as very thankfully, just about the write up and like how I was going to do the call out, and what he was interested in, and what I kind of thought was it'd be nice to give people that option if they don't want to do Amabie. So whenever we did the call out, we kind of had it that it was if you could create a mythical creature to protect you, what would it be? And surprisingly, a lot of people just did do Amabie, and that's cool too. I mean, she's so beautiful, and of course, I did one of her. But I did like that idea of looking at Irish mythology, and it just meant then if there was Japanese artists who were like, you know, Amabie's quite a normal thing for them, they could choose to do something different, or an Irish artist who feels very strongly with that. Now, we didn't get as many kind of ones that are quite Irish based. We did also get one that was a beaver, which I thought was really cool because that person was just kind of had their own reason of thinking why he could be quite an iconic character. So it is mainly Amabie's, but I think whenever we're displaying that in the gallery, you know, it can maybe have a couple of different zones. It was originally inspired by the Irish connections of St. Bridget, and it was like the 1st of February. It was kind of the start of spring, and how people would kind of make woven crosses that you would hang up on your door. And there was these kind of ceremonies called biddy boys, and it was basically like you made like an effigy, like this female character who sometimes was dressed in your grandmother's clothes. And again, it's this idea of bringing forth a good harvest and hoping for the best, which Amabie does as well. And I was just like, when you look at the documentation of it, you're like, what's so bizarre? And then it brings in connections with mummers and the idea of going door to door, connecting with your community and making these kind of woven hats and things they'd have on. So there's one of the pieces is me wearing a mummer's hat. And, you know, I think that could maybe be a bit of a project on its own. And I think Amabie kind of took over because I think a lot of artists were making work from home. And it was probably a bit easier to do that. So I definitely think that could grow in a different way. But there's only maybe a few that are kind of included within that.
Okay, great. It's really fascinating stuff. So so should we take a look at some specific examples of this and the really wide range of approaches that all of the artists took? Because you've got animators, you've got people working in sculpture in different ways, you've got people who are illustrators and comic creators and all sorts of people. So shall we have a quick look at some of the examples?
Sure. We definitely had a wide range of people, but I think I'll maybe just start off with the original image that is mainly known about Amabie. So this is one that would have been like kind of in the local news and kind of documented before. So I'll just share my screen here so you can see. So you can see this here, which is just a really beautiful image. And you can see kind of the 3 legs coming from the sea, a beautiful mane of hair. And I just thought this is a really good starting point because it's also that flexibility that people can change her into anything that she wants to be. So I've got the Instagram here, which is kind of the format of showing it visually online. So we have submission from different artists. So there's about 25 artists, including 2 young people that have been included. And I like that because, you know, it's the fact that you're in lockdown and your children are there. So I really kind of like that one of the artists was like, oh, you know, can I include my child's one? Or, you know, someone was actually collaborating with her niece, which was really nice. So as you can see, this is just a really quick thing. And this is just, you know, like Shiro playing around with a new app that he's brought together, but it just worked so well. And it's that kind of, again, embracing the kind of online kind of quality of that.
So just for the audio, can we just describe what was happening there? Sorry.
Okay, so with Shiro's video, he's using this app, and can I turn the music on, or would that?
I think, yeah, you should be able to. Let's try.
So he's just made a little drawing of an Amabie, which kind of pops up in this app, and then it kind of comes and scuttles around the floor. So it kind of like moves around on the table, which is just really sweet. And then we had some more stuff that was a bit more obscure. So this one here I really like, because there's kind of a description here. This is by Chris Watt, and he kind of just looks at this idea of stories of contorted human forms or similar kind of rock faces, and the natural forces and the ancient humans and bones, and that one there I just thought was just really nice and quite unique.
So it's quite a skeletal image that we're seeing, and so it says he came up with the concept for the painting after visiting Malin Head on the very north coast of Ireland. So yeah, so there's just this skeletal form it's almost like it's embedded in the rocks. It's against the rock faces.
In a bit of a kind of fetal position.
Yeah.
And there's a triangle protruding from an eye that kind of, an obscure kind of things in the foreground, kind of makes it quite dreamlike, really kind of bright neon colors, and along with this really kind of strong blue and white for the skeleton's body itself, which is really nice. I will just, let's see, I could go on and talk about every single one. Let's just have we scroll so you can see just like some of them against each other. So this is another Japanese artist, which is absolutely gorgeous.
It's sitting on buildings on fire almost.
Yeah, so Emily, she's actually just studying at the moment, and she's studying in London, but she's Japanese, and she had a couple of versions. So there's a couple of versions of this one. This is a collaboration with Grace McMurray and her 5-year-old niece.
Oh, the embroidery, it's so lovely.
Little embroidery, which kind of has a mermaid, she's got wings, and just like a couple of sequences I like as well. It's like just, like wee cuts of purple and blue. So Paula, I thought you'd enjoy a bit of embroidery. So just really simple one. Clinton Kirkpatrick, again, his one is more that kind of unseen, unknown character, because when you talk about the Japanese yokai, sometimes they're literally an inanimate object, sometimes they can look almost human, and sometimes it can be quite bizarre. So I like that his was much more free in the way that was represented. Here we have an artist who bid on eBay for something that was supposed to be made from Amabie's hair.
Right.
It was a brush on the internet. So his kind of piece is, and he ordered it. Here it is in his home. He had done a residency in flax recently, so he was over in Belfast. So it was just really nice to kind of have people's work. So that one in particular was cool. Like you said about graphic artists, we have some graphic artists in here. So we've got Fionnuala Doran, we have Grace Fairley, and then I think there was Anne Molly Henry in particular, this kind of one too. So as you can see, there's a real mixture of things. Tomohiro had also been to Flax on a residency too. And it's weird because now that I've been in Japan, I've seen these kind of, this is just outside a shop somewhere, but I just love as well that it's got the mask on. So this is kind of like an everyday image. Someone who could have stumbled across this kind of amazing kind of sculpture, and then it being put with like there's a kind of scrawled Amabie that almost like spray painted, but obviously done on Photoshop or something beside it. So it juxtaposing the two, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Love these little guys with their masks on as well. So it is a real mixture of things. So sometimes people made things in their homes. Some of them have done ink drawings or used like found objects, like Davies here, using hair. This is the image that I had mentioned before myself. the kind of mummer hat on. So there's kind of two in the series, and I had actually taken these quite a while ago, back in the back in the Folk Park. I think it's the one in Belfast.
Yeah.
So
is that the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum?
Yeah, that one's the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum. So you can go there, and there are often weavers that'll kind of show you that. And then if you want to look up mummers, there is different mummers groups from around. I think the main ones are in Antrim, and they still perform wedding ceremonies and do different things.
Right.
When I worked for Belfast Photo Festival a few years ago as a director, we actually had an exhibition by Jim McGinn. He actually went around and documented mummers over the years and looked at folklore, but also looked at the traditional music. He was very interested in traditional music, so he has a lot of work that's to do with those. So I think that probably had placed it in my head originally, just looking at that. And then one little miniature performance. This is just done over Zoom. Oh, actually, we do have sound for this one. Let's try it again. So this and another work are kind of a GIF. So what you have here is Sinead Brennan-Cashell's doing a live performance on Zoom to me. And she has put in the background there's a big kind of mummified fish in the Ulster Museum. So it's in the background, and you got the Ulster Museum itself. So she's put on kind of like a sequin top, a nice long wig, and has like a duck beak. So she's kind of wiggling around, kind of as if she's looking at herself, you know, which I think is really sweet. It's kind of like, just reminds me of the internet. It's like a weird kind of TikTok, but an artistic TikTok or something. Just really simple, which is nice. So and then we have some ceramic pieces like Chris's here. And then the more Irish one, Jim Ricks was one of the first ones, but this was the kind of ones I was hoping for, this kind of amalgamation of Irishness as well. So he's kind of amalgamating various kind of characters. And Jim Ricks he's an Irish, I've forgotten the name. He lives in America, but he's an Irish, I wrote this down, didn't I? Yeah, he's an Irish conceptual artist. So so that's kind of examples. I haven't got all of the work up. The last one I'll show you is my piece, apart from, so I have the Irish piece, which is the two photographs together, and then this one is a drawing that I made, and it was just that kind of cathartic drawing. And because I like tracing things and drawing them over and over again and getting them really simplified, but then whenever it's lockdown and you have to like stick it to your window with light coming through, you know, trying to draw it, I kind of like that lockdown process I had, because then you'll have people here who maybe can't go out and make things. I was surprised we did get as many ceramic things as possible, so some of the artists might have changed to video pieces. We also have a fantastic one by Amy McGee, and she has, and I'm going to use it as the opening piece for when you go into the exhibition, and it's a video piece, and she's made puppets, and she tells you the Amabie story, and it's just absolutely stunning. It's really nice. So I'll hope by the date where we do hopefully show it, I will have all of them online. At the moment, it's just most of them. And we also have a video of how to make your own Amabie by a Japanese artist, Azuru. And that it's about 15 minutes long, so we have to just kind of link over to that. So he makes a little paper Amabie where the little beak is kind of in the paper, and you can make her talk, say whatever you like. Good. So you can see, like, it's already such a wide range of work, and there's still more to come.
Yes. So you mentioned a hopeful exhibition. Do you have any more detail on that at the moment, or what do you know? What can you tell us?
Sure. So Poland Studios, based in Belfast, had offered to do the exhibition with us. So, and quite a few of the Paula artists all submitted as well. So they've been really tight-knit with us on the project. With current lockdown methods, there are some galleries that are currently open at the moment, but maybe some of the larger organisations like the MAC and the Golden Thread Gallery. For Poland, then people will probably do it by appointment. We'll have an opening, hopefully, November 5th, which is usually like a late night art where people come out, and we'll have all the safety measures in place, and you can basically book like an appointment to come along. So I'll probably put some weekend dates in and an evening each week that people can come along throughout November, fingers crossed. And if it does get put back, because naturally that's what's happening at the moment, it's kind of part of the project in a way, because the project was made during lockdown, and it means that if you have to book in for an appointment to see it, it's almost becoming a performance. You're becoming part of the exhibition by being able to come along. And of course then with people who especially aren't able to, for health and safety purposes and things, come out, I will have the Instagram up, and I'll maybe kind of do a bit more of like an exhibition online and kind of look at that just for kind of access, to make sure, and especially for the Japanese artists as well, that they can kind of see all the work together. And for my previous shows, I always kind of shoot a video where I can talk through things, and just means then that people who can't come can still feel connected to it.
And do you think you'll have a lot of the physical works there, or will it be, because there's quite a lot of sculpture, for example, so would it be photographs of those, or will the actual works be sent, do you think, to show?
So I've contacted each of the artists and kind of just had a chat with them. And as well, like, I'm kind of self-funding this. I don't have any funding for it. But obviously I've been supported by the Arts Council for years, so I don't mind, contributing some, especially my own time, but also some resources. So I have a small budget for kind of temporary prints for some things. And then a lot of the local artists, I'm able to kind of go and collect the work. But I just kind of ask the artist, what way they want it shown, because some of the video works obviously will go on screens. Which particular one, the beaver that I mentioned, which is lovely. It's a GIF, and I think it would look really nice on a tablet or on a phone. So it's kind of displayed in the way it was meant to be viewed. But yes, especially Japanese artists, obviously I give them the opportunity, if they want to post it, they can post it over and I'll return it. But we don't have, unfortunately, enough budget to kind of get that over, but we'll be able to reprint some of those. So especially like Azuri, which isn't Azuri, the work that had the Amabie hair object, don't want to lose that on getting it posted over. So I think a print of the two beside each other, so like the internet image of it being sold and then the image of it in the house, I think together would look really nice. So actually we will have quite a lot of the artists are up for having the drawings or the ceramics physically there, and then the rest of the stuff then we'll kind of print maybe in like a temporary manner, or I thought about having mine displayed on the window, because I do often have window drawings, so I think it would work really well as a window drawing as well. So the work will change a bit in the space too.
And then I suppose it must be a factor now, you have to figure out how many people you can have in a space and how far apart your things, that sort of stuff has to maybe be considered now as well. And Poland's not a huge space, so that's quite complicated.
Yeah, I think it's kind of well, in Millennium Court Art Centre that I went to recently, it was like one bubble per half an hour. So, and then there would be frequent cleaning and things like that. But because I'm coming from a venue, I'm already used to doing that currently for my job and work. So I'm very aware of all the exciting terms and conditions and health and safety policies all over that. So I can make it as safe as possible.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed it can go ahead. But as you say, even if it's delayed, it just adds more time and possibly more overlooking from the Amabies to help us out, hopefully.
I know. Come on, guys.
That's brilliant, Johanna. Thank you so much for that. Before I ask anything else, should we, because we had those links up screen, but just for the audio, do you want to point people just towards where to see these?
Sure.
For the moment.
No worries. So to find out more about the exhibition, so it's johannaleech.com, and that's spelled JoHannaleech. And then you can do / Amabie, so AMABIE. And on Instagram, it's Amabie_project. And that shows you all of the stuff that we've came in. So between the two of those, we'll kind of have all the details. We'll hope that we'll create a Facebook invitation page soon enough. So otherwise, if you follow Paula Art Studios on Facebook, they will then have that online. I also have a Facebook artist like page. So if you just search for my name that I spelt earlier on, you'll be able to just kind of like my page, and then those updates for things like the events and stuff will come up as well.
I suppose just on this, I mean, how do you feel about exhibitions going online more and more? Because I'm personally loving it, because it means I can see stuff in Belfast and I'm stuck here in Newcastle. So, but how are you personally finding that and feeling about that as an artist?
I think it's good. And my previous solo exhibition that I mentioned before, it was in Millennium Accord Art Centre, and it's only, about 40 minutes from Belfast, if even 40 minutes to half an hour away from Belfast city centre. But there's so many people who can't drive, who are artists mainly. I didn't learn how to drive until I was 30. So there's a lot of people who, although it's not that far away, and our transport system isn't great, that actually I realized even when I was doing an exhibition that was just outside of Belfast, I did a recorded walk around of my exhibition, which was called Wanderlust and Fantastic Oddities. So if anyone wants to look up, what the work that I kind of described, that showed a lot of my work, was kind of like a little survey of everything I've done so far. They can look it up online, and there is I have a ton of photographs, really good documentation, and then just a little walk around with me with video. And then that's great because I can share that to people, and I have artists that I work with in the States, and even then all the people who are in Belfast that just couldn't get to there, through other reasons, can have access to it. And I think I discovered that before lockdown, how important that was. And I think it continues to be very important, because there's also even times where I maybe go to an art exhibition opening and you're too busy kind of chatting to whoever's with you, having a glass of wine, and it's quite busy. And then you're kind of like, I'll go back and then I'll sit with the work, or I'll look at it for longer. And sometimes you just don't get that opportunity. So I think the more that arts and things can go online, I think it's great. But it doesn't take away from that actual experience, because a few weeks ago, I've been self-isolating quite a lot and working from home. And I just decided that when the Mac reopened, I went to see the exhibition at the Mac. And again, you booked into a certain slot, and it's a huge space. So, it's a bit safer to maybe go into a small kind of gallery space. And I also went to the Golden Thread to see their show on the same trip. And it just is there's no way, that buzz and feeling of going to a gallery, it's not as if, virtual stuff's going to make it worse, or people won't go out to galleries if they can look at it online. That nothing can change that idea of just the silence of the space, the concentration on artwork, the experience of the artwork, being out of your house. Just, you can't, it was just such an amazing experience. It almost felt like I was going to a church, and it was my religious experience. That's what it felt like for me, was getting back into a gallery and just gave my heart that little extra beat that I needed. That's, I think seeing art in person will never be diminished, essentially, what I think.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear.
Or is that very romantic?
No.
Romanticized?
Yeah, no, it sounds good. I totally understand what you mean. I imagine I'll feel the same when I feel able to go to a gallery again. but for now it's just not really for me. And but yes, I know the space as well that you're talking about, so I can just imagine it. And it would be a bit, I can imagine it would be a bit safer because they are really big rooms that you're in. But also it must be nice to have peace in them because they're only letting so many people in at the one time. So that must be quite a nice element of it as well. You feel like you have maybe a more intimate experience, possibly.
Yeah, and I hope that's what maybe the Amabie project would be like, because then if there's people like both of us are saying, you know, we don't want to be, you know, gallivanting around with everything that's happening in the world right now. Whereas if I knew that it was just myself and my bubble going to a place for a specific time, we know people have cleaned it, and you go in, see the art, and go out, and like you said, and have that peace to experience and for as long as you want. I think is really nice.
And if it's okay, you mentioned about working at the Strand Arts Cinema as well, so you're used to that. Is it okay if I just ask you quickly about how that's going and
Sure.
You know, the cinema experience, because that's quite similar. It's another sacred arts space that we need to protect. And how is that experience are you finding of working at a cinema, but also people coming to that cinema again?
Like, I think I kind of had to make a kind of, you know, oh, welcome back to the Strand COVID video, just to put out on social media, just so people knew the experience. And I mean, like, as far as any kind of COVID procedures and things, like, we have every box ticked and more. You know, we've changed our screening times where there isn't people coming in and out of the building, and there's like special cleaning that we have, like a fogger machine that antibacterializes the seats and everything, never mind then, you know, just having cleaning stations and cleaning more. So we have that all kind of ticked. So I actually have been to a few screenings, well, 2 screenings since lockdown, because I know the Strand is as clean as it can be. And also we're a small cinema and we're in a rural space, we're not the city centre, so we're never super busy anyway. And then with COVID, we're not particularly busy, but it just means that you can book exactly where you're sitting, you're socially distanced. And so I went and saw Tenant. And the other event I went to was a global film screening, which we're doing at the moment, and it was with Green Book. And then we kind of had a discussion on kind of Black Lives Matters and different things like that. So yeah, just give me that buzz, because, you know, we're kind of, you know, a vintage cinema, designed in 1935, so that kind of encompassing kind of red curtain feel, and you're sitting in half back seats, and the experience is just so lovely, and just being immersed in the film. Because I just thought, no matter how many times I've watched Inception by Christopher Nolan, I've forgotten half the time what happens in it, and it's because I just kept on watching it at home a few times, or maybe had a glass of wine, can't remember the ending very well. So it meant then with Tenet, I had that full attention span. I went in knowing that it's Christopher Nolan, and, you know, there's going to be questionable things about it too, but it's going to be an amazing cinematic experience. So I did feel like, I kind of said there, maybe it's because of my previously religious background, but that kind of that ultimate buzz of being like in your synagogue, you know, it's like, you know, the room itself and the space, and just being so spread out, and the feeling safe, because people around you are further enough away, and you just get to switch off and fully enjoy a film. And I noticed so many more things in Green Book than I did watching it at home, because I missed it in the first kind of cinema release. So there was a few times with things I was like, oh, this, that, and I was like doing the talk afterwards. Like, I was noticing things more, and I'm supposed to know more about the film. So yeah, I just agree with you. Like, you know, the experience of being in cinema is never going to take away from watching those, you know, films on Netflix and whatever. Yes, it is great that those platforms are there. So in the global film screenings, I've made it that you can go on to the Strand's website and you can read like a resource about the Green Book. So it has the recording of us doing the talk. It also tells you that you can watch Green Book on Amazon Prime. So I've kind of make packages afterwards that make it accessible to people who can't go. So they can still feel like they're part of it. So they can watch Green Book from the link. And then obviously they would need to, you know, pay for that or have Amazon Prime. But then I would recommend and give links to the films that we mentioned in the talks, because you always forget when you're listening to something like that.
Brilliant.
So I have resources of different films that are good to watch, like Moonlight. And then I have a connection with Belfast, which talks about Frederick Douglass, who would have been one of kind of the main people to kind of abolish slavery, and he had been to Belfast, and that connection. I had read an article about it in 2012, so I was able to like place that too. So we're in the Strand, we go beyond film sometimes, and with special events then I can still bring in an online audience, or I just give people that chance to go, what was that film she was watching, and then I can tell them about the original Green Book and how it really was for Americans, and recommend documentaries and stuff. So I think you should get out there and support your local spaces. If we can all stay open, they're closed in the south at the moment, so it's good to support those spaces, but you'll never get over that kind of cinema experience. Or my partner was telling me, we were talking about VR, and he said, you can get VR which makes you be in a cinema and then it projects your Netflix film.
Oh yeah, but you have to wear a really heavy headset, and you can't, it's the smells of it too, it's the other sensory things, it's the way the light is, it's the way the sound kind of almost hugs you because it's soundproofed, and it's all of those things, it's
when the lights go down, it's like, ooh,
you have a ticket,
it, all those things, like like I think there's I was gonna say Mark Cousins always talks about the romanticism of the cinema, but in the way he kind of describes it, like on how he likes it. I think he likes sitting in the front seat, is it? In a front row? Or
I do. I like sitting in the front. I like just ignoring if there's other people. I like feeling like I'm there by myself and it's just for me with the big screen.
Exactly. Well, if people go to the Strand, you might be very small amount of people there, and it'll feel like it's your own screen.
If I could
but
get
the feedback,
probably would.
Exactly, but the feedback, from customers when I did that COVID video, and I got a couple of vox pops, was one of them was like a guy who was a film student, and he was just desperate to be back. And he's like, I've been 3 times this week. It's like, oh, it's so lovely. And then it's weird because the family audiences haven't really came back, so I think families have got so used to being in lockdown and getting to schedules. I think I'm hoping there'll be a time where those guys are able to come back and enjoy themselves. And that bit of, if you're a parent as well, okay, you might be watching a kid's film, but your kids are going to be quiet, hopefully beside you for an hour and a half. Enjoy it. Take the time for yourself to watch a movie and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's just worrying with so many outbreaks in schools at the moment. So it's very worrying to take children anywhere, I think, at the moment. That's one of the things. But yeah, we just have to find a way to help cinemas survive, I think, if we can.
Yeah, and I think, well, the Strand is spoiled because we're supported, because we are a charitable organisation. We're supported by the Arts Council.
Spoiled, you've earned it.
Well, just compared to maybe some of the other independents, who, like my wage is funded by the Arts Council because I'm doing all this outreach, and whenever it was lockdown, I was doing online videos and events and supporting artists and paying artists. So we can kind of do that, and we're a bit luckier than some of the other spaces that might just be going on solely the income they get in the door.
Right. Is there anything else you would like to say, put out there, or anything before we go?
Well, no, I think we've already talked about it. So I had mentioned my website, so if people want to see my work, because they can see the exhibition at Millennium Court, which kind of encompasses all of that. And yeah, keep an eye out for the Amabie stuff. You can get most of a sneak peek. You get on the Instagram at the moment. There's most of the work there. And so just thanks so much, Paula, for having me on the chat. It's been really good.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, thank you for doing it. It's brilliant. I've been following the project with interest, and it's such a lovely idea because it is just that idea of care and something looking after you, but also a collection of people who are all spread out. They're all dispersed, coming together to work on something like this. It's a really beautiful thing. So it's a lovely thing to be able to highlight and put out there, really. So thank you very much for showing us so much of the work. It's wonderful.
No problem.
This has been a Cozy People production with me, Paula Blair, and my very special guest, Johanna Leech. The music is Common Ground by Airtone, licensed under a 3.0 non-commercial attribution, and is available from ccmixer.org. Episodes release every other Wednesday, and you can get those anywhere that you find podcasts, but also you can subscribe to my own personal YouTube channel if you find PEA Blair. You can see the full recordings now that we've been doing the video versions as well. Do please share and subscribe to help other people find the show. Be part of the conversation with AV Cultures Pod on Instagram and AV Cultures on Twitter and Facebook. We're always happy to hear from potential guests, so if you've got an idea for a show or something that you're working on that you'd really love the world, my tiny bit of the world, to hear about, then please do get in touch. I'd really love to hear from you, and if I've invited you and I haven't heard back from you yet, I've got an open door policy, so it's never too late, and everybody's really busy and stressed, so don't worry about it. I'm always also happy to have suggestions from listeners about topics something that you think you'd like to hear us try to cover. I do try to make those, and I do keep a list. There are loads of suggestions that have been made in the past that I haven't got to yet, just because I haven't been able to access the stuff, and that is partly where your support comes in. So even if you want to send us a DVD or access to something that you'd like us to see, that would be really helpful. So I do wear all the hats in the making of this program, and so if you could support my work, and there are the memberships in Patreon as described earlier on, but you can also drop me a fiver at buymeacoffee.com/PEA Blair, or you can give any amount, so like £1 or something, if that's all you want to give, at paypal.me/PEA Blair, and just anything at all really helps. So huge thanks for joining us. I hope you really enjoyed this. I loved making this episode. Keep well, stay safe, and as ever, be excellent to each other. And I will catch you next time.